Are you considering buying a home, but you're stuck on the fence whether you should be buying new construction or a resale? The difference between shiny and modern versus character and possibly better location? Well, here's the problem. Most buyers pick wrong for their lifestyle, their budget, and long term goals. And it actually costs you thousands of dollars, potentially tens of thousands of dollars in that decision. Today, I want to break down the pros and cons of buying new construction versus a resale, and we're going to go over 8 pros and cons of each option for you. So, as always, if you're new to the channel, please feel free to like and subscribe, as I am your local Central Iowa real estate expert, and I'm here to help buyers avoid bad deals, overpriced homes, and costly mistakes. And we also talk about sellers as well. So, again, please like and subscribe, and I'd love to have you follow. So not all buyers, but a lot of buyers end up in the same position. And they always cross the bridge of, do I buy something brand new and shiny, or do I buy something that already exists? And on paper, new construction always looks perfect. It's brand new, why wouldn't it? But a resale home always looks like it may take a little bit more work, but it's easier on the budget. Here's the truth. Neither is better for you. It all depends on where you want to be. So after we go through the pros and cons of new construction and resale, at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you exactly who should be buying what type of real estate and when. So let's start off with the new part, the fun part, the shiny part, new construction. And what are the pros to new construction? Well, number one, you're going to get that modern layout everybody's looking for. Well, most everybody. The big open floor plans, the nice big, potentially luxury kitchens, the large walk-in closets. And depending on the builder, you might even get to design some of your home if you get in early enough in their build phase. That's pro number one. Number two, and this one weighs pretty heavily for me as well. This one's energy efficiency. And a lot of people don't realize how much extra they spend in their energy efficiency by not having the new windows, the insulation, the newer furnace and AC that is going to be a higher energy efficiency than some of that older stuff. Now, in resale, yes, 100% you can upgrade all of these things. But remember, we're talking strictly on the purchase. So number two, energy efficiency. Pro number 3 for new construction, and this one weighs heavy for a lot of buyers when thinking about buying a home, is going to be lower maintenance costs. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'm brand new. I shouldn't be looking at replacing a roof. I shouldn't be looking at replacing mechanicals. I shouldn't be looking at doing major remodels and upgrades to get into today's current taste market, I guess you could say. Now, even with new construction, and I would hate to think how many times I know people that are like, hey, I want to change the light fixtures, or I want to maybe change the paint scheme in the living room, bedroom, whatever. That's all cosmetic. That's not anything that necessarily brings value to the property. So at the end of the day, it is still maintenance issues that are going to be big. Number 4, and this is a pretty big one, it's a builder's warranty. And every new home in the country comes with one. And it is standard that it is a 1-year warranty. Some builders offer more than 1 year. So that's definitely something to pay attention to. But what comes with this 1-year warranty? Well, again, depending on the builder, depends on what the warranty covers. But 99% of the time in that first year, anything that breaks, whether it's mechanically, whether it's poor craftsmanship, drywall cracking, which is common, should happen, new houses settle, doors don't latch right, stuff of that nature, those are all covered by the builder. And almost every builder is going to give you 11 to 12 month walkthrough again to go through, pick apart the house, fix everything that's a problem again. Some builders will even touch up drywall and paint within that time frame. So it kind of gives you the option of living in a house for a year, and as long as it, I'm not going to say falls apart, but as long as the issues occur within that first year, everything's fixed. So you're back into a brand new house in year number 2. Number 5, and this comes back to getting in early within the build phase is having the ability for customization within your house so that you're not a cookie cutter house like your next door neighbor. What does that look like? Well, most builders are still going to be quantity builders. They're not going to be custom. So you might only be able to pick your flooring, your cabinets, countertops, backsplash, paint, stuff of that nature, not necessarily a layout. But it gives you a sense of being able to turn the home into your taste versus, again, like I said, the cookie cutter looking just like your neighbor, because that's what we do. Number 6 for the pro is you get a home that's in the current era of building codes and safety measures. And even though that doesn't sound like a lot, upgrading the electrical, the fire safety, the structural, all of this bringing to modern day code are issues that have been found, or I guess overlooked, over the last, say, 100 years that a lot of houses have been built that are going to fall within that resale category. And a big one's going to be your upgrades on the electrical side of things, and that's strictly for safety. It's not necessarily in the functionality of the electrical. Number 7 is going to fall into the new neighborhoods and amenities that those neighborhoods offer. So a lot of the new neighborhoods are going to offer some form of park or trail. You might get a pool or even a gym on site, because the builders know that in order to entice people to come and buy the new construction, because it is a little bit more expensive, that they have to have amenities that are going to go with the property. And I know here locally in central Iowa, primarily Des Moines, a big thing for all the builders has been the parks and trails. And we have an array of trails that go through almost every subdivision that will take you on some route that connects back into a scenic trail. Last but not least, the 8th pro of buying a new home is the new home factor. You're the first owner of the house, so there's no known problems. There's nothing that needs to be updated. There's no damage. There's none of this. There's no mystery stains on the carpet. There's no why does this outlet not work? None of that stuff. You are the only person that has ever been in the property. And sometimes that's just a nice feeling to have. So all those pros sound very nice to owning new construction. And I'm 100% on board with those pros. I agree with all of them. But what are the cons? The cons of new house, new builds, new construction. Well, probably the biggest con anybody's going to come up with is that it comes with a higher price tag. And you're paying for a premium, but what does that premium include? Well, to me, the biggest premium that's included is you're paying for those, say, 8, maybe 10 years of maintenance free. The only real maintenance you should be doing is probably changing your furnace filter and cleaning out your dryer vents. Outside of that, the home should be maintenance free. You could, I suppose, deal with your normal maintenance on a furnace, AC, and water heater. But sadly, the bulk of the population don't do that. I highly recommend the furnace and AC. So take care of those. Secondly, most entry grade homes, they will bait and switch you on new construction, because it's always nice to do what most people are going to call upgrades or add-ons. And those add-ons, they add up fast. Whether it's potentially all the appliances, a lot of builders don't include the fridge. Some don't include the fridge, washer, and dryer. Maybe you want mini blinds. Maybe it's a new fence. Just a lot of these things that aren't considered when buying new construction. The other thing when people buy new construction that they probably don't think about is their current furniture that is not going to be in an open floor plan 9 times out of 10, or is going to be in a much smaller house. You always go out and you think you need new furniture. That's probably also something that's not considered as a upgrade, but it is somewhere where you're going to spend money. Now, potentially, depending on the time frame of year, this next con would come into play, and that's going to be potential building delays. Now, usually there's only building delays due to weather, or when we had COVID, could have been supply chain problems. That's usually the main building delays that take place, especially if you're not doing a custom home. Custom homes are kind of a different animal anyway, because then it comes back to the contractor being able to do it in the time frame of which they agreed to do it in. Next, new construction, sadly, so that builders could do more mass production. Number 4, that one hits home for me because I've watched it in the real estate world over the last decade. They shrink the size of the lots. So you're getting a little bit bigger of a house typically, but your yard space, you're on top of your neighbor. That is probably the biggest con for me personally that I see in it, is a lot of these houses, you are 10, maybe 12 feet away from your neighbor. And that includes your yard and theirs. So split that in half. The next thing that is a big con for a lot of people is going to come back to that curb appeal. And that curb appeal typically does not have any mature trees, no shrubbery, no shade, there's no privacy, no nothing. You can see everything that goes on in your neighbor's yard and or house, and vice versa. Con number 6, and this is a big one for a lot of the newer plats or locations, subdivisions, whatever you want to call them, is the potential HOAs. Those are becoming regular in a lot of places here in my metro. Now they're yearly HOAs, so they're still fairly loose within their guidelines, but nonetheless, they're still an HOA, or you could just say the covenants. And what does this do? Well, it protects you as the buyer. So there's a pro there that you can't have anybody that does a nuisance of a property next to you, would probably be the best way I would phrase it. So you're not going to get like this bright pink house that blends in with doesn't blend in with everything else around it. That's the main thing for a lot of these covenants. But on the flip side of that, it's having that yearly HOA. And here in central Iowa, the Des Moines market in particular, usually those yearly HOAs are between $200 and $300. So it's not much to the monthly payment, but what does it really include? It typically only includes the sign coming into the entrance that's got a light on each side of it so people can see what the name of the subdivision is. And when you take into account hundreds of houses potentially in a subdivision at $20 to $30 a month, that's a lot of money to maintain such a small little aspect. Next, and this is a big one for some, is new developments. Obviously, they're not in the center of town. They're on the outskirts because that's how the town expands. So it comes back to location. And I know personally where we live, we're at the very far edge of town because we are in a newer development. My development's not new by any means. But for me to get to even a grocery store, I am a 17 to 20 minute drive pending traffic in my town. It's actually quicker for me to go to the next town over to get to a grocery store than it is for me to go to the town I'm in, because residential expands out, and usually it takes so long in the residential world or so many people for the commercial world to catch up to it to justify the growth of additional shopping options. Last but not least is you live in a construction zone. Now, for how long? That depends on when you're buying in the subdivision. Are you one of the first buyers? Or are you coming in at the end of production? And I would say on average, if you're buying new construction, you should plan 1, if not 2 years of driving through a construction somewhere in your subdivision, whether it's coming in or whether it's going out, but particularly right around where you're buying, you are probably every bit of a year out before all the lots have been consumed by most quantity builders. If you're doing custom, usually you're not in that same situation because you either have more space or the lots are bigger, or we could go down a rabbit hole there, but yeah, I would figure at least a year, if not 2 years in general, that you're going to live in a construction zone. So out of all of those, that's the 8 cons of new construction. To me, one of the bigger ones is just the smaller yards. And then also, I'm not going to say it's a bait and switch, but I'm going to say the things that people don't think about when buying new construction that are just added expenses to get your home where you need it and to function properly for you. So you've made it through the new construction aspect, and we're about ready to dive into what a resale pro and con looks like. But please, if you would, like and subscribe if you find this content delivering value to you, because I'd love to have you as a follower. Let's switch gears into your resales, or not new construction might be the better way of verbiaging it. And what are the pros to a resale? Well, pro number one, and this one goes a long ways for a lot of people, is just going to be location, and better location. Why is it a better location? Well, you're typically closer to all of your amenities, from schools to restaurants to potentially jobs. I would say parks, but like I said earlier, in the new builds, a lot of builders are putting some form of park or recreation in their subdivisions so that they have that amenity. But yeah, location, that's going to be a big one. You're going to be surrounded by more developed areas, is probably the best way I'm going to put it. Number two, established neighborhoods. Now, what does that mean? Well, an established neighborhood really is something that's older. So you're going to have those mature trees. You're going to have a sense of community, even. And you're definitely not going to be cookie cutter. Because even if you go back into, say, the 50s through the 80s on housing, the houses really didn't look identical to one another. Whereas in all the new construction, most builders only have 3 to 5 floor plans that they build a year. And if the floor plan goes over well, they just move it into the following year. I know most local builders here have 2 floor plans that they do year after year after year, and they've done it for 5, 8 years because it just sells so well. So I guess in that sense, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of situation. But again, we come back to the established neighborhoods and not being cookie cutter. That's a big one for a lot of people, is the architecture, the style, the standing out, or maybe not standing out, but having a sense of your own. Thirdly, and this one correlates back to one of the biggest cons of new construction, is the larger lots on a resale. You get a much larger place to call your own, not necessarily in the house, but in the land around you. I'm going to use my specific house as an example. My house is roughly a 1,500 square foot ranch. And yes, they still build them today. My house is only 15 years old. But I'm sitting on almost 4/10 of an acre in my subdivision. And I would say that's one of the more normal lots. I'm going to tell you we're roughly probably 1/4 to 1/3 of an acre is the normal lot size where I'm at. The new constructions by the exact same builder, I want to tell you, are somewhere around 1/4 of an acre to 0.15 acres. So like 60% of 1/4 of an acre, or a little over 1/8 of an acre, and they're still building the same size of house on that. So you virtually have no yard. And that's what's nice about some of the older houses. They come with a lot more yard space. So if you have kids, pets, you want to be more outdoors, you got the opportunity to do more in an older property. Another big pro to buying a resale is most often, more than not, you will find more affordability or a lower price point. And what does that allow you to do? Well, the affordability will still allow you to, maybe it's to upgrades, maybe it's to get an additional bedroom, bathroom, or even a garage space that you can't get in new construction because the budget doesn't allow it. But the affordability might still allow you to live a little bit more of what a lot of people call a luxury lifestyle. The house itself might not necessarily be luxury, and entry grade new construction isn't luxury either. But you might be able to travel, you might be able to have newer vehicles, you might be able to do a lot of things just due to the price tag entry point of a resale versus a new construction. Pro number 5, and this one's big. I think it gives you a sense of identity, and it's going to be character and charm in a property. A lot of your older architecture, whether it's a brick, maybe it's the aesthetics, just realistically the build of the house, it's not cookie cutter. You get the built-ins in most of the older houses. You get a unique architectural design. Maybe it's arched doorways, maybe it's the brick, maybe it's the finished attic space. I mean, just a lot of different things. A lot of your older houses have more intricate woodwork. You might have a wood burning fireplace. I mean, these are all things, true hardwood floors. These are all things you're not going to find in new construction. And sadly, that character, that means a lot to a lot of people. Number 6, immediately move in. So buying new construction, you are typically, depending on the stage, some builders are going to have some that are move-in ready. That's still a normal 30 to 45 day close. But I would tell you a lot of new construction, you might be 60, 90, or even 120 days out. Whereas your resale, as long as it is move-in ready, meaning not needing updates, rehab, or anything like that, still 100% livable, you have the immediate option. You've got that 30-day close window to buy. It gives you a much shorter time frame to plan your future around. Number 7. So here's something that people don't think about. On a resale, you get negotiation opportunity. There's no builder out there that's going to negotiate on their price tag. Why? Well, if they negotiate on one house, how many more houses are they essentially negotiating on moving forward within that subdevelopment? Right. They can't negotiate with you because essentially they're negotiating with the next 20, 30, 50 people that are buying a house because they reduce their cost of that initial house with you. So back to the resale. It allows for more negotiations. Maybe you need closing costs. Maybe you need repairs. Maybe you need whatever, but it allows negotiation into the transaction when you buy a resale. And number 8, but last but not least, is you're buying the actual home in a resale. You're not looking at the model home and then trying to buy your home and figuring out how much away from the model home it is. I don't know too many builders that don't have upgrades in a model home. And then that's where it comes into those upsales that we talked about. And the last one is it gets costly to upgrade to what you like in that model. Whereas with a resale, you get exactly what you see. You know what you're walking into. And if you want to upgrade, if you want to remodel, that's on your choice. So now that we've went through all the great reasons on why a resale works wonderfully for a lot of people's budgets, as well as potentially their taste in real estate, let's talk about the cons of buying an older home. And as you can imagine, number one thing to look out for is the hidden issues in the house. Now, what am I talking about when I say this? Well, being that you're not buying something brand new, the likelihood of having older mechanicals such as your plumbing, your electrical, your HVAC, and even your roof. These are your major expenses in a house when coming to an upgrade. And yes, you could argue with me on the kitchen as far as expense, but a kitchen needs to be functional, whereas these other ones need to actually be in place for not only safety, but as well as maintaining the property. So major issue is the older aspects of the home. Secondly, just like you or I, as we get older, the con number 2 is maintenance. Stuff breaks. Stuff doesn't work like it used to 10, 20 years ago. So the maintenance on an older house, you have to anticipate a larger maintenance budget when dealing with older properties. And again, that can come back to those hidden costs, but more importantly, just maintenance all the way around, because nothing is going to be brand new. Whether that's windows, energy efficient, like we talked earlier, siding, ventilation, even foundation. Any of these things can be a major maintenance cost to you. Third, we're in an era of open floor plans. All of your older resale homes are going to have what is called a closed off or more outdated layout, meaning your kitchen's typically not open to the rest of the property. The dining room is going to be separate instead of just being an eat-in kitchen type of situation. On top of that, most of your rooms are going to be smaller. We've come accustomed in newer construction that you have a 12 by 12 normal child or guest room, and your primary suite is going to be 14 by 18, 16 by 20, something very large. Whereas in your older homes, all of your rooms were smaller, and the only larger functional area was the living room, which is where your entertainment took place. The fourth con to buying a resale or older property is the less efficient energy and or mechanicals. What does this do? Well, it results in a higher functioning expense. And by functioning, I mean your gas and or electric. Whether it's to heat or cool the property, typically your utility costs are going to be higher. Number 5, this can be overcome with a home warranty that you can buy separately, but it doesn't come standard, and that is a builder's warranty. So once you own the property, it is now your responsibility. A home warranty is going to run you anywhere from $700 to probably $1,400 a year, depending on what coverage you get, to maintain a warranty moving forward on a resale property. Number 6, renovation expenses. So how many people are going to go out and buy, say, a 40-year-old house and say, this fits me to a T? Very few. Now, I'm going to say none, but very few. And what does that mean? Well, it comes back to renovation. And what are the costs for renovations? Whether it's kitchen, bath, it could be as simple as new carpet. It's not free. So renovation costs is definitely one of the big cons in buying a resale or older home. And it's something that has to be taken into consideration. I know when I take clients through any house, whether it's new construction or resale, the main things that I tell them that are the most important to any house is the layout. Do you enjoy or like the layout? Everything else is cosmetic. Same with a resale, same with new construction. If you love the layout, then everything's cosmetic and it can be done over time. But you have to budget for those expenses. Number 7, resale is more of a competitive market than new construction. Why? Because new construction, they're built a dime a dozen. And like I said earlier, most builders only have 3 to 5 floor plans. So they're constantly building that. It's just what feature do you need in the lot? Whereas with resale, it sometimes attracts bidding wars. And what does that do? Well, it might mean that the property is marketed at A and ultimately multiple buyers bid it up to price tag B. So essentially you're paying more than what it was marketed at. Now, pros and cons to that. Pro is if you got extra money to spend or it's with at least in your pre-approved budget, not a problem. Bad thing. It still has to appraise if you're financing it or you're making up the difference. So keep that in mind if there's something about the property that is a must-have for you and you haven't found it anywhere else. It still has to appraise out, or you, the buyer, or you negotiate back in with the seller the difference of the appraisal versus the purchase price. Last but not least, number 8, previous owners. So if you remember, one of the real big pros of new construction is you're the only owner of the house. Well, here, you're definitely not the only owner of the house. And the question comes back that remains, how many DIY projects were done in that house before you owned it? And I'm not saying a DIYer can't do a project. I'm saying that a lot of them probably shouldn't. YouTube's a great tool, but if you don't know what you're doing, you just don't know what you're doing. So be aware of anything that might be DIY'd or renovated by the homeowner and not a professional. So now you're probably asking yourself, how do I know which one I should buy? Well, if you remember at the beginning, I told you, I'm going to tell you which person should be buying which type of property. So who should be buying new construction or at least considering it? Well, that's for the person that wants to have low or minimal maintenance on a property, somebody that prefers more of the open concept or modern layout, somebody who can afford or has the time frame to allow for a longer time frame if it is a new construction, depending on the phase, and somebody that has a flexible budget. And by flexible, if you remember, I talked about all those upgrades or add-ons within new construction that a lot of people don't take into consideration. So on the flip side, who should be buying an older house or a resale? Because really it's the same thing. And by older, it doesn't have to mean 50 to 100 years of age. It's just you're not the first owner of the house. And who should be thinking about that? Anybody where location might be a priority, because the newness, like I said, is always going to be on the outer limits of the city. Secondly, maybe somebody that wants a bigger yard or bigger lot, whether it's entertainment or functionality. Thirdly, somebody that needs to move quickly. So your time frame's a little bit more precise, I guess would be the term that I would use, because the resale is going to be move-in ready 9 times out of 10. And last but not least, the person that wants to negotiate or have leverage within the deal. That's the person that should be looking at resale, because you're going to have more movement, whether it's in the price tag or seller concessions, in order for them to sell the house that they currently occupy. I also want to add 4 little tidbits of where the buyer makes a very common mistake when looking at real estate in general. For new construction, it's falling in love with the model. Because remember, the spec home doesn't come with every feature of the model. For that, on top of that, is if you try to upgrade what you're getting, it's overextending your budget for the upgrades that the model does have, that could actually set you backwards or make it so that you're a little tighter on the monthly payment than what you'd like. For the resale side of things, it's ignoring the long-term maintenance. That's one of the big things that gets overlooked, because everybody's like, oh, well, when it breaks, it fix it. I'll pay to fix it. The problem is depending on when it breaks, how long out it is, where you're at personally and financially, it might not fit the bill when the fix comes due. And last but not least is it's choosing options that are pretty instead of practical. What do you need for your current lifestyle and or family setup versus what do you want? 2 totally different things. Keep that in mind when looking. So if you're still on the fence of whether you need to decide between new construction or a resale, and you'd like help breaking down numbers, breaking down options, breaking down timelines that actually fit your needs and your current lifestyle, reach out to me. Drop a comment below. Let me know if there's anything else that you'd like me to touch base on. Are you learning something out of this video, whether it's new build or resale? I'd love to hear from you. I'd also love for you to like and subscribe so that I can help more people like you.